Hello, everyone. It's Peter Richardson as your host for the latest edition of the Counterpoint podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the refurbished smartphone market, which has been growing pretty strongly for a number of years, and it's an area of the market that Counterpoint has been researching now for 3 or 4 years. So we have quite a lot of detailed data on it. So we're going to talk about the refurb market, and I'm very happy to be joined by Varun Mishra, research analyst with Counterpoint, who's been driving a lot of the research around the refurb market. So, Varun, how are you doing today?
Hi, Peter. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Super. Yeah. All right, Varun. So you've, I think, just come through the latest update of our refurb ecosystem work. So let's sort of get into this by starting, looking at the refurb market. So it's a market which has been, out there for a while and growing. But let's talk about, the major regions. Where do we see the key regions where donor products come from?
I think mainly, I mean, the key regions, if we talk about from the donor point of view, is the mature markets, the China, the US, the Europe. So what happens typically is a user, uses their smartphone devices for 2 to 3 years and then upgrades it. So what happens to the older devices is either they can be sold into the channels, or they can be drawn, or they can be passed on to their relatives. Now, the devices which are actually sold into the channels, either through retailers, through OEMs, or through operators, especially in the operator driven markets, like the one which are very, very mature. So, those are the ones which actually form the universe for the devices of the refurb ecosystem. Hence, these are the regions which see a lot of volumes from the donor side. Further, these devices are then collected by the collectors. They are then diagnosed and graded, and then finally refurbed by the specialized refurbished players. So these can either kind of happen within those regions or countries, or then go outside or exported to the refurb hubs like those of China or the Middle East or Southeast Asia, Philippines maybe, and then redistributed across the globe. So this is how the whole refurb ecosystem kind of functions at a global scale, with the donor side being from the mature markets, from the operator driven markets, from the trade-in driven markets, and the refurb hubs and the consumption side on the other side of the market.
Right. So I remember when I was looking at this and talking to some of the refurb players that the grading of the devices as they come in is pretty key, right? So, I mean, as I recall, there's typically 5 grades, A through E, where A is pretty much like new and E is non-functioning. So, is it that all grades of devices move through the system going to refurb hubs offshore, or do some of them get refurbed, in the local market where they come in?
Obviously, there is always a higher demand for a higher grade device. Grading is absolutely, as you said, is the key, because once we grade the device, it is at that point in time we decide the value of that particular device. So it is definitely one of the most complicated and most important process in the whole value chain. From the demand side, yes, there is always a demand for higher graded device, or a high quality refurb devices. But we have seen devices on the lower grades like C grades or D grades also going through the ecosystem and being referred by the players.
So, which if we look at a C grade device, let's say, presumably that needs a fair amount of work to get it back into a sellable condition. So, what are the typical repairs, or what type of work is being done to get it back to that reasonable condition for sale?
Most which we see from the repair or the refurb point of view is, I think, most common repairs are displays, then there are battery replacements after that. Then there is also, speaker and camera replacements. Other than that, camera module replacement is one. Now we are also seeing charging port repairs or refurbs on the rise now, since uh, uh, OEMs are also moving away from the headphone jack. The charging ports now is now multifunctional, so that is also there. So these are the most, kind of common repairs or refurbs which we see, with display definitely being one of the highest percentage.
Got it. Okay. So, there are, as we know from the brands that we track in the market, there are, hundreds of different smartphone brands. But I think the refurb market is dominated by just a few brands, right? Which are the high value ones. So, Apple always seems to come up. But, which other brands do you see, maybe rising in terms of importance, or losing their value at the moment?
I mean, yeah, I think you said it correctly. I mean, refurb is not like the new smartphone market. It is much more consolidated as compared to the new one. So most of it, around 70% of the market, is captured by the Apple and the Samsung, the Galaxy series of Samsung. So this is mainly because these devices have high residual values. All the premium segment devices for Apple and Samsung, they are also pretty much, high quality devices, very very functional even after 2.5 years of usage. If we talk about Apple, the software support for Apple is much longer than any other. So that is also one point, which, the device is updated for a longer period of time, even if when it goes into the second life. So Apple and Samsung clearly are the ones which dominate this particular market. However, we have seen Huawei also rising a bit with its efforts in sales in China. But then after the GMS ban, it kind of started losing value in the trade-ins in markets outside China. Then for other brands like other Chinese players, especially like Vivo, Xiaomi, Oppo, these brands are also there. They're kind of rising, but it's difficult in the refurb segment, because the if we talk about these brands, these are mostly dominated in the mid price tier segment in the Southeast Asian market, in the Indian market. And when they come to the refurb, by the time the replacement approaches, they have lost a lot of their value. And when it goes into the refurb ecosystem, there are also comparable devices at comparable price points with very very aggressive specs, which also, seem to become a competition for these refurb devices. So it's mainly Apple and Samsung, with Huawei rising a bit. For others, it's kind of really fragmented.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. And I think what we've seen in the way in which specs have developed, particularly for Apple over the last number of years, with the introduction of waterproofing or water and dust proofing, I think has also helped to help those devices to hang on to their value, right? So, if water damage is, historically was one of the big issues causing a loss of value in a device. So, if you make the device waterproof at the outset, then it's much more likely to hang on to that value for longer. So, yeah, kind of makes sense that.
Yes, yes. For Apple, I think it also makes sense for them to keep on, fostering their trade-in programs, is because we have seen recently that they are kind of pivoting towards a service-oriented strategy as well. Now, these services have a better experiences in the new hardware as compared to their older hardware and older chipsets. So they want their users to come to the new hardware. So that is why probably they have launched SE also. So they'll, I think, keep on fostering the trade-in programs to help the users upgrade, so that they have a whole new experience of their services ecosystem as well.
Yeah, and I guess also, I mean, it helps to grow the user base for Apple, right? So even if an initial Apple user comes in using a 2-year-old refurbished iPhone 7 or something like that, they can get a decent experience and start to form that connection with the Apple services, and then subsequently they may buy a new iPhone, but already they have that stickiness with the services, so they're more likely to become and stay Apple users for the long term, which ultimately will drive lifetime customer value for Apple. But let's look a little bit at what's happening to the market for refurb devices overall, because I mean when we look at the new smartphone market in 2019, it declined a little bit. Obviously, we've had the coronavirus situation for the first quarter of this year and continuing, which is going to have a pretty serious impact on the overall market size. But thinking about 2019 start with, so let's kind of park coronavirus to one side, so because that's a fairly serious kind of impact on the market. But just looking at 2019, so we saw the market for new products decline. Was that also reflected in the refurb market?
Yes, correct, Peter. I think refurb market also declined 1% in 2019. The trends with the new smartphone market and refurb market are always linked. So if there are lesser users which buy a new smartphone, that means lesser volumes going into the trade-ins. That means lesser volumes ultimately in the refurb. Now, this is basically because I would say three key markets: China, Europe, and US, which also are the key donor regions for a refurb. So the sell through in all these regions in 2019 declined. China kind of declined 8%, US declined 12%, EU declined 3%. The smartphone penetration in all these regions is very, very high. These are the markets which are driven primarily by upgrades. And these upgrades are slowing down because the replacement cycles are eclipsing. iOS now has a replacement cycle of around 3 years. Android has climbed to around 2.7 years. Hence, the upgrades rate is coming down. For example, in the US, the upgrade rate in 2018 was at low 5%, but now it has dropped to around 4.6% in 2019. So these replacement cycles, especially in the premium segment, is lengthening, which is in turn a reason for the slowdown in the refurb market. And some of the reasons you have listed out, like we were talking about, was the devices in itself are now becoming more and more powerful, more and more durable. They are able to span more rigors, day to day rigors, and are able to sustain for a longer period of time. And users are also kind of spending more on their devices. The ASPs of the new smartphones are going up, but at the same time they are holding on to the devices for a longer period of time. So this is primary reason why we saw a market decline in 2019 for the overall refurb segment.
Okay, but I think we had some pushback from some of the players. I know, for example, in Europe, that some of the players they were arguing against that, saying, but we've seen our market for refurb increase. So why are some people seeing their market, their refurb sales increase while we're seeing the overall market decline?
I mean, regionally, yes, there can be some. I think it's mostly the smaller players for whom they saw sales increase from smaller base. But all the larger players, especially in the China or in the US, all of them were kind of on the declining side of the refurb market. They have seen the ASP growth in the refurb market on the brighter side, but the volumes did decline.
Okay, so over the last several years, we've seen a kind of strong growth in the mature markets, and in fact, if you go to most of the I know, for example, if I go to European operators' websites and look at products they have on sale, you will find refurb products on the front page of their e-commerce sites. So it's an established market in mature markets, as we were saying, like Europe and US. But what about growth markets? Where are we seeing new growth in the refurb ecosystem?
Primarily, emerging markets are the one which are growing. For example, LATAM grew, Africa is growing, India is growing. So there's some similarity between all of these markets. The refurb segment remains in kind of nascent stage, I would say, in all of these markets. The smartphone is underpenetrated. So many users are looking to come online through affordable devices. The premium market also is less in these particular segment. For example, it's in India, it's only 2%. Uh, um, and refurb is a very, very viable option for aspirational brands like Samsung or Apple. Premium devices at affordable prices uh, is kind of also driving the growth in these markets. So if we talk about each, I mean, LATAM, we are seeing operators are now taking trade-ins. For example, Movistar in Argentina is doing trade-ins. Brazil also, the operators are now doing trade-ins in their devices. For Africa, if we talk about it Africa, it remains a very, very price sensitive market. So a cheap refurb devices is very helpful in coming online. It also makes sense for operators who are trying to push LT in those regions. They have infrastructure in place, but still a large part of population is on 3G and 2G. So affordable refurb devices also help users and operators to bring those users to LTE networks and increase their ARPU. But from all of these markets, I think the most important market remains India. So we did a consumer survey in India a while back. So 45% of users in India were likely to upgrade in the next 1 year. It is a market which is bucking the trend of lengthening replacement cycles. The replacement cycles in India are actually becoming shorter. There are feature phone users which are coming online through shifting to smartphones. There are upgrade users who are in their second and third smartphones, which are readily upgrading their devices now. So this is all kind of fueling the Indian market as well. And refurb is one of the very, very viable option for these markets. And the local ecosystem players are also realizing this opportunity. We have a lot of small local players as well as bigger players like Cashify who are, you know, uh, kind of driving this market.
So just to kind of wrap up on India, because we've got one more topic which I want to touch on before we wrap up. So, if Apple has been a very small player in India, but they are now, I think, manufacturing in India, and the sales are gradually increasing. But are we talking about products that are being harvested from, let's say, Europe and the US that are being then exported to India, refurb, and then resold, or is it all product that is coming from the Indian market itself?
In India, the import or export of refurb is prohibited. So there's a law actually against it. So all the devices which are coming in India from the refurb ecosystem, the source is the country itself. So we cannot import it. I think there is a hazardous waste rule of 2016. So yes, so all of the devices which we see in the segment are from within the country.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Varun. So the last topic that I wanted to touch on is related, and I think a lot of the same players or similar players are involved, which is the repair market. So again, this is something which we've seen developing, particularly from, actually we've seen it across all types of markets, both mature and emerging. So can we talk about that for a couple of minutes? So what is kind of driving the repair market? So this is, I break my screen, or my charging port, as you said earlier, stops working. Rather than junking the device and getting a new one, I get it repaired. So what's really kind of driving that market, and what are we seeing as the kind of key trends here?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point that you have raised. Repair market is gaining traction over the years. Uh, Now, the fast repair and reliable repair is becoming a part of overall experience of a smartphone for the user, because the dependency on the smartphone is so high. A user cannot part away with it for weeks. So they want their devices to be repaired very, very fast. So this is something which is gaining traction over the couple of years. We have seen OEMs also realizing this. Uh, the OEMs in US especially, like the Samsung or the Google or the Motorola, they have been partnering with specialized repair players like Ubreak iFix or iFixit to get these devices repaired as fast as possible, as accurately as possible. So there has been also a lot of chatter about uh, the right to repair movement. I think you can probably add more on that. The bill has been already introduced in like over 25 states in US, and if it's passed, so the community is kind of demanding the access to the manuals, to the support from OEMs for the ability to repair devices. So if this bill goes through, there'll be more options available for consumers to get their devices repaired, at a cheaper rate, because for now it's mostly they have to be dependent on OEM service centers, and that can sometimes take time, and it's very sometimes can get expensive as well. So yes, there are a lot of things going on in this particular segment as well. Maybe you can add from Europe point of view what is happening there, especially from the right to repair point of view.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much as you say, and I think it also keys into some of the environmental pressure that is being applied. That there has been historically a trend toward something breaks, you throw it away and get a new one, but that is increasingly being seen as environmentally aggressive. So much better to repair and reuse. So repair, reuse, recycle. Quite often these words are used together, and I think it's part and parcel of the same movement. In fact, the overall kind of green movement is a large part of what's driving refurb in Europe. So if you go to markets like Germany, refurbished devices are often sort of portrayed as being a greener alternative to a brand new one, and repairing is also seen as a positive environmental choice rather than just throwing away and starting over with a new device. So I think all of this is keying into many of the same trends. So anyway, Varun, thanks very much. It's really interesting. As I said at the top of the podcast, we do a lot of research around the refurb space. So if you do want to learn more, either from Varun or from the rest of the team here at Counterpoint, please do get in touch. So Varun, thanks very much for your contribution. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter.
Keep safe, and thanks everyone. So please do check out our other podcasts that you can find on our website, and keep tuning in to find out what comes next. So thanks very much. Look forward to talking with you again. Bye now.
Bye bye.